the home of a missing 98-year-old woman.
Yeah, there have been a lot of questions about what exactly happened here. We know that a family member was in town right before this woman went missing.
On April 9th, 2018, in the quiet town of Wadsworth, Ohio, a worried voice broke the usual calm of the local police station. Police? Yes, this is Howard Leeser. My aunt lives on Portage Street. A friend checked on her yesterday, but she was nowhere to be found. How long has it been? 3 days. Papers are still on the porch. Something's wrong. Her name was Margaret Douglas, 98 years old. To her family, she was more than an elderly relative. She was a cherished soul, fiercely independent, yet increasingly vulnerable. When they realized she hadn't been seen in days, their worry turned into dread. Margaret, at nearly a century old, could have had a fall, maybe a health scare. But what haunted their thoughts was far more sinister. She wasn't in her home at all. We don't know where she's at. She's 98, lives alone. What could have happened? What indeed? What had befallen this gentle old woman? And why did it involve a local teenager? This is the haunting tale of Margaret Douglas's tragic end. Wadsworth, a small, unassuming suburb of Akron, Ohio, is home to 24,007 residents. It's a place where people feel safe, where the chance of falling victim to a violent crime is a mere 1 in 663. It's a place where no one, especially not an elderly woman, expects to meet a dark fate. Yet, when Margaret vanished, her family braced themselves for the worst. The police initiated a search, combing through Margaret's house, calling out her name, hoping for an answer. But the silence was deafening. Expanding their search to the neighborhood, they discovered Margaret's last known appearance was on April 5th at home. She hadn't been heard from since April 3rd, nearly a week before the search began. As night fell on April 9th, with Margaret still missing, Howard Leeser, her nephew, and his wife Cindy arrived at the house to help. Margaret, childless and widowed, was their responsibility, someone they cared for deeply. They knew her habits, the red wallet she always carried, the clothes she would wear if she left the house. Howard went to check the closet, expecting to find her belongings in order. But what he found was beyond comprehension. The clothes were scattered, pulled from the rail, forming a haphazard pile on the closet floor. Beneath them, he saw a shoe. Margaret's shoe? Leaning closer, his breath caught. There, hidden under the disheveled heap, was Margaret's lifeless body. The closet, a tiny confining space, had become her final resting place. Margaret was dressed in a nightgown, torn and stained. Bruises marred her face, and her neck bore the marks of strangulation. The state of her body revealed that death had claimed her days ago, around the time she was last seen. Forensic teams scoured the scene, collecting DNA and fingerprints. When tested against her relatives, the samples didn't match. Whoever had committed this atrocity was still out there, a shadow lurking in the town's quiet streets. Was it a burglary gone wrong? Margaret's red wallet was missing. There were no signs of forced entry. She hadn't locked her doors, trusting in the safety of her neighborhood. But someone had taken advantage of that trust, invaded her sanctuary, and stolen her life. The only other clue was a plastic food service glove found in the backyard. It suggested premeditation, a calculated attempt to leave no trace. Yet, in their haste to escape, the killer had left this vital piece of evidence behind. What did the glove signify? Who had been so cold, so methodical? Was Margaret targeted, or was it a random act of violence? The investigation turned to her family. Did anyone stand to gain from Margaret's death? Did she have enemies? But Margaret was a peaceful, sweet old lady, well-liked and with no known disputes. Her life was a testament to resilience, having survived nearly a century of history, from the Wall Street crash to the fall of the Berlin Wall. She had lived a full life, working at O'Neill's in Akron, marrying an Army veteran named Donald Douglas, and settling in Wadsworth, where they had spent decades together until his death in 2000. Margaret had chosen to stay in their home, a place filled with memories and surrounded by a friendly community. Her neighbors, like David Klinkenbeard, watched out for her, ensuring she was safe. But not even this close-knit neighborhood could protect her from the darkness that eventually came knocking. As the police canvassed the area, a disturbing pattern emerged. Reports of car break-ins, petty thefts, and then something far more chilling. On April 8th, just hours before Margaret was found, a carjacking had occurred nearby. The victim, a church worker named Paul Shalad, claimed to have been attacked by a young man he had tried to help, but Paul's story didn't quite fit. Surveillance footage showed a different sequence of events, casting suspicion on his account. Yet, when pressed, Paul revealed a more sordid truth. He had lied out of shame, not malice. His deception led the police nowhere, leaving Margaret's killer still at large. Then, on April 13th, a break came. The police received multiple calls about two young men causing trouble in Margaret's neighborhood, and another about a break-in at a nearby construction site. One of the perpetrators had left behind a phone. That phone belonged to a young man named Zachary. Zachary, known to the police for minor offenses, was now their prime suspect. But when they brought him in, he confessed only to the break-in, denying any involvement in Margaret's murder. It was only when the police revealed that another young man was seen with Zachary that the truth began to unravel. Zachary spoke of an accomplice, a 17-year-old named Gavon Ramsay. Gavon, troubled from a young age, had a history of violence and a fascination with the macabre. When the police brought Gavon in for questioning, they started with the petty crimes. But as they pushed further, Gavon's calm demeanor began to crack. Gavon's phone held the key to the case. Inside was a dark folder, password protected and labeled with a single word: murder. Within it were photos and videos, disturbing in their detail, of Margaret Douglas, taken on the night she was killed. The images revealed Gavon's cold, calculated attack, from the moment he stalked her to the gruesome aftermath. Faced with this undeniable evidence, Gavon confessed. He described the thrill of breaking into Margaret's house, the rush of adrenaline as he watched her sleep, and the horror that followed when she woke to find him there. He recounted how he had strangled her, hidden her body, and then documented his crime in a twisted trophy collection. Gavon's confession revealed a chilling truth. He had known Margaret. As a child, he had even helped her with chores, a connection that made his crime all the more monstrous. He claimed remorse, but his actions spoke of a mind driven by something far darker.
I'm so sorry for what I did. I constantly live in regret and shame because of it.
If not for the police's persistence and a few fortunate breaks, Gavon might have escaped, free to harm again. But justice caught up with him, bringing an end to this nightmarish chapter in Wadsworth's history. Gavon Ramsay was arrested, a 17-year-old with a mind consumed by darkness, for the brutal murder of Margaret Douglas, an innocent woman whose only crime was trusting in the safety of her home.